with the scent of potpourri. The films we commit to memory. Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a movie and TV podcast that covers a specific topic, be it genre, trope, movie, or show each episode. You can find more of our work at obsessiveviewer.com, and while every episode will always be free, if you'd like to support what we do here, you can become a patron at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for tons of bonus audio content, including TV and book reviews, immediate reaction movie reviews, Patreon potpourri episodes, movie commentary tracks, and so much more. It's exhausting. Again, that's at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. I'm in the process of doing my dark episode by episode reviews, and then I'm also doubling up and doing episode reviews of For All Mankind. That just launched today. That is going to hopefully be every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday until the end of the year, if I can keep that up. So check that out, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and you can find me on social media and Letterboxd at Obsessive Viewer. And today on the show, we're going to be reviewing I forgot I put this in my notes. We're going to be reviewing two spooktacular Shocktober new releases. The conclusion of David Gordon Green's Halloween trilogy, Halloween Ends, which is currently in theaters and streaming on Peacock, and the latest entry in the VHS found footage anthology franchise, VHS 99, which is currently streaming on Shudder. And joining me today to help me review these two movies and keep me in line are two of my IFJA colleagues and friends, both returning guests to the podcast. We have Joe Shearer, whose work can be found on Midwest Film Journal and frequently on Medium Cool, a movie podcast, and Brent Leuthold of AwakeInTheDark.com and the Awake in the Dark podcast. How is it going, you guys? And welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Doing great. I just realized I forgot to do orange lights in this room. Maybe I can change. I actually might be able to change the lights.
Nice.
In before we even get to Halloween Ends. I'll see.
Nice.
You're ruining the podcast.
Yeah, I know. With these just boring, random lights.
You're ruining the spooktacular Shocktober vibes that I have established on this episode.
I'm going to have a kind of like grainy, like tracking effect on my video here, and then there's going to be like a monster pop up behind me all of a sudden. So
nice.
And then there's going to be like a shaky cam sort of thing.
Nice. And then I will just disappear from the podcast, and someone else will host it for the majority until the final showdown with me hosting the podcast at the end. So welcome, guys. Why don't we go ahead and give your guys' social media stuff, and like what have you guys been up to lately, and what kind of stuff have you posted in the internets recently?
Go ahead, Brent. You go first.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I am pretty much all my stuff can be found at awakeinthedark.com. I'm Awake in the Dark on Letterboxd. Awake in the Dark Reviews on Facebook, and AITT Reviews on Twitter. If you can't tell, I did not get in early enough on the social media game, so I have some scattered stuff there. I just posted a review today for Black Adam, which is the new DCEU movie, which I didn't like, but I still think I liked more than most of the other people in the IFJ who have seen it.
Well, I mean,
Evan and Andy, it's a pretty Evan and Andy had some pretty scathing takes on it. I didn't think it really worked, but anyway, I think I maybe liked it a little more than them, but it didn't make me mad. So
they liked it less than a kick to the groin. So it doesn't really matter anyway.
Did it completely change the trajectory or whatever it is that he keeps saying about it?
The hierarchy.
The hierarchy.
I don't know. I can't answer that question, which is, for as much as that was hyped, there is a mid-credit. I won't, of course, spoil anything. There's like a mid-credit sequence that like maybe sort of alludes to that.
Okay.
But the rest of the movie, I don't know. I mean, let's say he's very powerful. Like, and he flings humans around, and the people that he fights in the movie, like Justice Society of America, and like people that he fights, he seems to generally do pretty well against. But I don't know whether it's a hierarchy movie, changing movie. I just can't say. It's up to Dwayne. I'll leave that to Dwayne.
Nice. Nice.
All right. So you can find me on Facebook, or I don't know. I'm on Twitter. I don't ever get on Twitter, but Letterboxd also. I'm just Joe Shearer on Letterboxd. It's SHEARER. Everybody gets it wrong, so just look in the notes, I guess. So
Yep.
don't spell it wrong. I've been writing some stuff for the Midwest Film Journal this month.
Nice.
I've been on Medium Cool a couple times already this month too. So it's been kind of a busy month. So
Nice.
I'm pretty excited about a couple of things I've got coming up for Midwest Film Journal, including my No Sleep October entry, which will be
Nice.
on Stephen King's Silver Bullet,
Oh,
which
nice.
is a movie I loved as a kid, but I kind of forgot about it. And I recently ran across it and I was like, oh man, I love that movie. Rewatched it and decided to write something about it. So so check that out I believe on Halloween Day. So
Ooh, nice.
Oh my gosh. That's prime real estate right there.
Yeah. That's the front parking spot of the parking lot, you know.
Nice. That's great. And I have not seen Silver Bullet or read Cycle of the Werewolf, which I believe is what it's adapted from. But it's on the list, obviously, because I've got Stephen King stuff I've got to do forever.
And it's sort of a forgotten entry. And it's not great, but it's pretty good. If you know, it's one that's easy. It kind of, it stars Corey Haim kind of in like just before he breaks out in Lucas.
Oh, wow.
And Gary Busey is in it, being Gary Busey, and it's really he's really great in it. And there's a couple of nice recognizable character actors from especially from the 80s.
Nice.
And honestly it's a pretty good time. It's sort of I don't want to spoil too much about what I wrote, but essentially the direction kind of betrayed the movie. I did note the poster. If you look at the movie poster, it talks about how like one night a month, or it started in May, and once a month the werewolf kills again. But if you watch the movie, there's no it's just like there's a kill, and then they talk for a minute, and then it's night, and there's another kill, and then it's not. It's like it seems like this is happening daily. If you're
they don't pan over to a calendar to show you.
Right? There's no there's no like passage of time. It's just like one night after the next. And
nice.
Like, why aren't these people a little more alarmed by all these murders suddenly happening?
Right. Nice. And Brent, did you do anything, or have you done anything for Midwest Film Journal's No Sleep October?
Yeah, so I've had Black Adam on. Dwayne Johnson has just been filling my head the past few days that I forgot about my Midwest Film Journal entries. I did do Wes Craven's New Nightmare for the recurring Nightmare series that they did over there, which is I guess winding down. Well, not really. It'll be going through the end of the month. So that came out last week.
Nice.
Last Friday, I think. And then I have one for No Sleep October. I wrote about Goodnight Mommy, which is an Austrian horror movie that came out in 2015. Was just recently the American remake was just released on Prime last month, which I didn't really plan that exactly. I knew that there was a remake coming out at some point when I chosen Goodnight Mommy, but I didn't know that the time would be quite that close. So
nice.
So it's cool. I loved revisiting it. I love that movie. I know people are maybe a little sort of maybe mixed. I think generally people like quite a bit, but I'm definitely a fan. So it was a lot of fun to write about.
Nice.
I also did Freddy versus Jason for that.
Oh, sweet.
Okay.
So it's not. I don't think it's posted yet, but I actually just tried to Google it because I didn't hear. I hadn't heard from them whether it was live or not, and I found Mitch had one a year ago when they were doing Friday the 13th. So it'd be fun to. I have not read Mitch Ringenberg's posts on that, so it'd be fun to read that and see what he says compared to me.
Nice.
Joe versus Mitch.
Yep.
That's a real showdown.
Oh yeah. For me,
I'll be carrying my head at the end, walking out of the lake.
For me, I contributed to Midwest Film Journal's No Sleep October with an essay about the Clove Hitch Killer, which posted, I think it was actually the first No Sleep October essay this go around at Midwest Film Journal.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'll put links to all that in the show notes here, and links to all your social media as well. As well as microphone information, because I'm insane. But
listen, before we started, Mitch, Brent, and Matt spent a good 10 minutes talking about microphones, and I'm sitting here like, I don't know what the hell any of this means.
Joe, I want to know what I have to ask. What microphone are you using?
Jesus, I don't even know. It's a Tonor. I got it on Amazon. It was like $30 or something.
Nice.
No, actually, my friend Austin Glidden, kind of coached me through it. He was like, "This is like a decent budget microphone."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what what model it is or whatever, but it served me pretty well.
Nice.
And he was like, "Yeah, just make sure you like put the little filter thing close to it and talk right next to it." So
you sound wonderful.
Yes, it sounds great.
Yeah.
And Brent, what are you using tonight?
This is an Earthworks Icon Pro.
Nice. Very nice. And
I've used other stuff, and I don't know why I cycle through podcast mics because they're all wonderful.
Yes,
But
I'm kind of the same way. I have like my table that I have has the RE20, which is what I'm recording into, compliments of Brent. And then I have my pod mic and my SM58. And then in my bedroom, I have the exact same setup, only with the RØDEcaster Pro 1 because I'm insane. But yeah, so, okay. So without further ado, actually, before we get into our actual reviews and everything, I wanted to get your guys' takes on the Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumanium trailer that dropped today. How did you guys feel about this trailer, and what's your excitement level for Ant-Man and the Wasp, or Ant-Man 3 basically, in February?
Yeah. What great world we live in where there's a third Ant-Man movie coming out.
Yes.
You know? I mean, I'm older than both of you guys, and I remember when I made a very quick post about it this morning about how superhero movies when I was a kid were like really like off limits. I mean, Superman was really it, and I always dreamed about seeing Spider-Man and seeing all these heroes from the cartoons. It's like, why couldn't they make movies about that? And it's just great now that we're at the point where there's a third Ant-Man movie, and it looks great. I think. It's kind of continuing that theme of the what is it? What are we in phase 4?
I think this will technically be the start of phase 5.
5. So it'll continue this accidental opening of portals by the looks of the trailer. They gave away a surprising amount. We got a pretty solid look at King the Conqueror, and there's we see Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Douglas, of course, coming back as him and Janet Van Dyne, and some weird things. And we got a shot of the Bill Murray appearance. Yeah. So there's they kind of gave a lot away. I was kind of surprised, but then again, maybe they didn't give much away. So
right.
But yeah, I always get excited about the next Marvel movie, and I'm glad that this one's coming out to kind of up the stakes from what they're saying. Finally, we get some action. It kind of feels like that's a continuing theme where we're like, geez, when is this going to happen? And it's like, whoa, well, finally.
Right. Absolutely. Brent, how about you?
I actually didn't get a chance to watch the trailer, but this was one actually, didn't this like sort of kind of leak at something where they played it? Or something.
There was like I think Comic-Con or D23 like exclusive trailer that I'll be honest, like I saw the leaked version of it, and it looked better than this in terms of just the structure of the trailer and everything.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot more Kang in it, and I'm just so on board with Jonathan Majors as Kang. Even as someone who I haven't read like the comics, or I don't come from a comic background or anything, but I really enjoy the MCU, and I have this feeling that like everything that they've done post Infinity War and Endgame, the start of the multiverse saga has been, it's been kind of hit or miss all told with the individual entries and everything. But what they're doing to build up the multiverse and build up Kang is really appealing to me, because I feel like they are really positioning him to be a better and more fleshed out villain throughout the 2 or 3 phases of the saga than Thanos was, because Thanos didn't really have much going on until Infinity War, which was incredible. But I just love that like they're showing us Kang, they're doing Kang stuff this early. Really cool stuff. So
I didn't see so like the new trailer. I don't even think I watched the fully leaked one, because I generally don't like watching stuff where it's like the phone cam at the very side and it's like too big. But anyway,
dude flipping the camera around to his face and yelling "World Star." Yeah.
Let's go. But yeah, like I agree with you about Jonathan Majors. I watched Loki, and I know that he was He Who Remains in the very last episode of that. And then there was a statue of him, and then somehow I'm supposed to know his name is Kang the Conqueror. At some point, I don't know where that happened. But having said all that, I'm a huge Jonathan Majors fan. Going back to, I think the one of the first things I saw him in was The Last Black Man in San Francisco, and then like Defy Bloods, and I've just seen him a lot recently. He has a movie coming out called Devotion, which played before Black Adam, which has Glenn Powell in it, and that's about fighter pilots, so there's a lot of like Top Gun Maverick vibes. But I did see another trailer I did see that he's in is Creed 3. Which that also played before Black Adam, and that's an awesome trailer too. That looks great. I'm super pumped for that. So definitely stoked for anything Jonathan Majors. So that includes Quantum Mania, then nice. That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of both of the Ant-Man movies so far, but it will. I mean, I like Paul Rudd. There's certainly. I mean, I'll of course see Quantum Mania. So
yeah. To Joe's point about the fact that there's now 3 Ant-Man movies and it being insane, is that it's also kind of insane to me that, well, I mean, maybe not too insane because Marvel and like the whole Marvel machine and everything, but it's just interesting to me that not only do we have 3 Ant-Man movies, but we have 3 Ant-Man movies from the same director, from Peyton Reed.
Yeah.
Especially when Ant-Man was originally going to be an Edgar Wright, like his baby, and then he left, and I don't know, it's amazing that they were even able to salvage that first one or put something out that was entertaining. To fit into it. So,
and Peyton Reed was going to do the Fantastic Four years ago, also before
I didn't know
Story
that.
came in and did such a bang up job on him.
Yeah, with was that Fantastic?
that was the one with Chris Evans.
Oh, okay.
Johnny Storm. Yeah, the first one.
Yeah, gotcha.
Jessica Alba.
And
Fantastic was
that was Josh Trank.
Josh Trank.
That's
I was
right,
trying to remember his name. Yeah.
Man, that was.
I knew it rhymed with Stank. I remember that. Yeah.
It did rhyme with Stank. Yes.
Just a coincidence, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. So a lot of fun stuff coming down the pike in terms of movies and stuff. But tonight we are going to be talking about 2 feature-length films, motion pictures they're called, that are currently available to stream, and one is in theaters. So first I want to talk about Halloween Ends, and as we like to do here, we'll do a non-spoiler review, and then we'll play a clip from the trailer and then go into a spoiler review. Check the show notes for timestamps, and also you can get the timestamps at obsessiveviewer.com/OV385, where you can find all the show notes and links on all that stuff. But let's talk about Halloween Ends. Like I said, it's currently in theaters, streaming on Peacock. The premise is according to IMDb. The saga of Michael Myers and Laurie Strode comes to a spine-chilling climax in the final installment of this trilogy. Directed by David Gordon Green, written by Paul Brad Logan, Chris Bernier, Danny McBride, and David Gordon Green. Of course, it stars Jamie Lee Curtis, Andy oh my god, I can't remember how to pronounce her last name. Matichak?
Matichak, I think is how it's pronounced. I think.
There we go. James Jude Courtney and Rohan Campbell. So, guys, how did you guys feel about Halloween and Halloween Kills? And then what did you think in broad terms about Halloween Ends? Joe, do you want to get us kicked off?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm a longtime Halloween fan. I will unapologetically watch, any of them whenever they're on. Even, Halloween Resurrection, even Halloween 5. I kind of gleefully hate watch Halloween 5 every year, but not really hate watch it because I kind of secretly like it. So I was, when I heard David Gordon Green was taking over, for the 2018 version, I was kind of surprised and wondered, curious, obviously, like a lot of people. I was a big fan of it, both it and Halloween Kills. I love especially in these last two, this is an attempt, I think, to kind of throw a little social commentary in, and I'm very down with that. I think as it goes, and we'll get into it a little bit more later, I'm sure. But I really love it. There's some flaws, but my God, you go back on this series and the flaws are out there and evident. So yeah, I'm ready to overlook quite a bit, and I overlook a little bit here, but I was a big fan of those first two, just on the whole, and it was a lot of fun, more fun this time to see kind of in a more mainstream way people excited about seeing them. So nice. I was pretty heartened by Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills.
Nice. Brent, how did you come to this concluding chapter of the trilogy? How did you feel about Halloween and Halloween Kills?
In terms of the Halloween series, I've seen the first three, which is to say, the original, like 78 and 81 or whatever, and then Season of the Witch, of course, and then like I haven't seen 4 and 5. I haven't seen Resurrection. Or no, I think I've seen Resurrection and not H2O.
Oh,
that was the 20th one, right? 20th anniversary one. Anyway, I didn't see that. I haven't seen the Rob Zombie ones, which I know are not canon to this, but just generally to the franchise. In terms of 2018 Halloween and Kills, I'm pretty mixed on them. I'm like I don't want to say I'm like slasher agnostic. There's definitely slasher movies that I like, but I think I even came into 2018 Halloween a little bit sort of like, because 2018 Halloween is basically kind of a reboot. It's kind of a sequel reboot. It's a 40 years later. Yeah. I think it jumps I think this is right. Canonically, it jumps all of the other ones.
Yes.
Except Season of the Witch, because there are Season of the Witch masks in 2018 Halloween. So that's still canon. Somewhere out there is the Shamrock. Yeah. The jingle. Anyway, yeah. I was ready. I was curious, like what they were going to do with Jamie Lee Curtis and everything, and her kind of coming back to it. I'm just a bit cooler on them. I don't, and we'll talk about Kills and there is definitely some social and political commentary that they're going for with Kills. Maybe with Ends too. I guess we'll talk about that. But yeah, I'm a little. I might be the wet blanket of this trio, but that's okay.
That's totally fine. My kind of, I have kind of an not interesting history with the Halloween franchise as a whole, but I remember in 2014, Shout Factory or Scream Factory came out with that amazing box set, like the Halloween box set with all of them in it. And I remember like spending spending like most of that October just going through each movie, each disc, each bonus feature, each commentary track, and I wrote up this whole big thing on the website and everything. And so I was very much taken with the Halloween lore and everything, and I loved Halloween, of course, 1978. Like, that movie is absolutely just slasher perfection in my eyes. And I even really liked the sequel. I hated Season of the Witch. And then 4, 5, and 6 is its own little interesting thing. The Cult of Thorn trilogy, I guess. It's fine, but I was really into, because of my history, and listeners will know because I talk about this all the time, but like, my favorite movie growing up was Scream, and Halloween H2O, when that came out, that was basically like Scream with Michael Myers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I just adored it and everything. So that run of movies was really fun. And then when I got to Rob Zombie's movies, I was just like checked out, hated. Like, I did not like. I don't like his style at all. Like, it's just not for me. And one of the things that just eats at my mind is that he, in one of my big complaints with his Halloween movies was that the dialogue is just absolutely just garbage, dumb, atrocious BS. And like, I remember listening to his commentary track and him like addressing that and being like, well, that's how teenagers talk. I'm like, okay, yeah, that is, but that's not how screenwriters write. Like, you have to have something there. But
let me amend my comment enough to say I also do hate the Rob Zombie Halloween.
Okay, nice.
I actually did a roundtable interview with Rob Zombie for the first Halloween, and I was so excited about it. And he very emphatically during that interview said, I designed this movie to not have a sequel. I will not participate in the making of a sequel to this movie.
Wow.
I don't like sequels. I don't want to make one. If they ask me, I'm going to say no. Like, that was a quote. Like, I mean, that was almost like word for word what he said.
That's kind of the quote.
In my head, and I was like, I just remember that I was like, bullshit is what I was thinking, And sure enough, it came through, and I was like, that son of a bitch is a lying ass liar. And I've just told everybody I can. I'm like, he lied his ass off. I got no justification, from anybody. Like, I never saw any interviews or anything later where he was like, oh, well, I wasn't going to, but I was contractually obligated.
Now, Joe, isn't it true that in the Halloween 2 presser, he said, okay, fine, you got me, I'm doing the sequel, but I'm never doing a freaking Monsters movie. And then we come to see what happened.
Right. He just lies his ass off.
Yeah.
I will not do anything based on a 60s sitcom ever.
Oh, I love it. But yeah, I did not like his movies. But this trilogy from David Gordon Green, I was I was impressed with Halloween 2018. I thought it was good. It wasn't really until my second viewing of it, in which, plug for the Patreon, I recorded a commentary track with our friend Mike, who has the band As Good As It Gets, who does the theme song for this show, A Little Mad Sometimes. They also actually just have a new single out called History. Check it out. But anyway, and then Halloween Kills came out, and it's so interesting how this trilogy is basically David Gordon Green doing like slowly getting us. It's like a 3-act play where each act is just going deeper and deeper into like where you don't expect it. That's not an eloquent way to bring it up or to talk about it, but like Halloween Kills was so interesting to me, and I initially didn't really like some of the aspects of it, like the whole Evil Dies Tonight thing. And then I kind of warmed up to it, and then a weird thing happened when I watched Halloween Ends that it retroactively made me appreciate Halloween Kills more. And by the end of Halloween Ends, I think it is arguably the weakest of the trilogy, but as a whole connective piece of the entire trilogy, kind of all put together, I like, and this is admittedly a pretty low bar to top, but it is like the best run of Halloween movies in the franchise because it says something so interesting about Haddonfield, about the nature of evil, and it just does it in such a very just crazy way that it's very much his own unique vision, and as like it's the inverse of Rob Zombie's Halloweens, where those were his vision, but his vision is shitty as fuck. But
Right.
but this is just such a clear and interesting take, and the kills in really all three of them are just audaciously great. And I think that, like, in particular, I think Halloween Kills is like a perfect slasher movie for me, like in terms of the variety of kills, the gruesomeness of the kills, the variety of kills. Like the tension, the mood, it's so good. Yeah. So anyway, let's talk about Halloween Ends.
All right.
Yeah. So non-spoilers, what do we want to talk about first? In terms of Halloween Ends, the movie as a whole.
Well, do we want to talk about Corey Cunningham? Is that we want to save that for spoilers, or do we want to? I guess we have to talk about him to some extent.
We do, yeah. Let's talk about him in a broad sense, and then we can dig into him in spoilers. I have a theory about him or about his name in particular, but I don't know. It's probably
I think I might share that.
Nice,
with you.
Nice.
As far as the inspiration for his name, it's a very there's a very obvious parallel with another famous Cunningham.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I thought that was the first thing I thought when I heard that name. I was like, oh, I know.
Oh,
exactly
nice.
what they're doing with that. But yeah, it's you talk about the audacious choice, and I think that's the biggest of the the most, well, maybe not even the biggest, honestly, but the one that sticks out the most is that they follow this brand new character around who's who's this kid who was accused of we see the alleged crime right at the beginning as the opening scene where a child that he's babysitting dies under his care, and he's blamed and is something of an outcast, and then he meets up with the Strodes, the erstwhile Strodes, who are now trying to put things behind them, in the wake of the wonderful Judy Greer dying in the end of Halloween Kills. So it's an interesting choice, and I feel like it, on the whole, that works. To what David Gordon Green and Danny McBride and the other writers want to do. I think it catches people off guard, and it leads to a Friday the 13th Part 5 sort of vibe, and I think that's okay that people want to compare it to that movie, but I think it does it so much better. It does what Halloween Ends does. It does so much better than anything that movie would have done anyway. Even though that's one of my favorite Friday the 13th. I'm one of the few people who would say that, but but there's something to it, and I think that's again where we get to the larger societal message. And I was really into it. I was there on board for it. Again, there's a couple of mistakes along the way. There's a couple of questions that are left unanswered, but I think this storyline works, and it ended up being pretty satisfying to me in a movie. I mean, and if you look at it, I mean, this movie has been made umpteen times. I mean, we're ending the rivalry between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. I mean, we've had that. This is the third time we've honestly had that. If you count Halloween Resurrection as the abomination that it is, but it's I don't know. It works very well for me. It's not just a knockdown drag out, Freddy versus Jason style. If you can forgive me for bringing that back out, it's not that sort of thing. It's more of a examination of trauma and grief and I don't know, putting things in the past, or as Paul Thomas Anderson once opined, that the past we may be through with the past, but the past is not through with us.
Yes.
So all of that is kind of what these three movies are about, and I think this is a pretty satisfying conclusion to it.
Nice. Brent, how did you find Halloween Ends?
I kind of went into it not knowing exactly where they were going to start the story, because we can do spoilers for the end of Kills, right?
Right. Yeah.
That came out last year.
Yeah.
They kind of leave it a cliffhanger as to whether Laurie's daughter, played by Judy Greer, is going to. I mean, yeah, it seems like she's probably going to get it, but we don't really see it, and so that's kind of where they end things there on Kills. And then with Ends, they started with this prologue with Corey Cunningham, this character we haven't met, and I was just kind of interested. And then, of course, they do the credits and everything, and then Laurie's kind of doing the voiceover and some exposition, and basically saying, it's been 4 years, I think she said, since that night. And then, so I thought kind of an interesting choice, like right off. Like I didn't know, because I'm trying to think, because Kills started right after Halloween 2018, I think. It's like the same night.
Yep.
So the chronology is kind of interesting that way, where it's like you have two movies chronologically, like in terms of in the movie, like basically back to back, and then you have this one that's kind of 4 years later. So I thought that was kind of cool. I guess we'll get into it in spoilers. Corey is a big part of the movie. I actually liked one of the things I actually ended up liking about it, and this is like super lame for a for a slasher movie, but one of the things I probably liked the most was Corey's relationship with Allison in this movie. If Kills was Evil Dies Tonight, this movie's more like Love Blossoms Tonight. It's kind of like a sweet romance that they have that is kind of down to what you were saying about like Haddonfield, and how this is kind of just like a pretty shitty town that they wish they could kind of just burn down. And that's kind of what they kind of commiserate in that. And I like that. I sort of like their them kind of finding the connection through that. Allison was in the previous two movies. She was in Halloween 2018 and Kills, but like not a ton. Actually, she wasn't really in Kills very much at all, I don't think. Or was she?
Really? She was kind of just going along with with her boyfriend and Lonnie throughohout the movie. But
I want to say she was in Halloween 2018, maybe even a little more than Kills. But regardless, she's in this one probably the most of the three, and it was just cool to see her. There's some pretty gnarly kills in this, for sure, which we'll talk about. I think the conclusion's pretty satisfying, and I think, I'm not a huge like I haven't seen every single Halloween movie. I'm not like huge on slashers, but if I'm taking a step back, and for the people that really vibe with this franchise and this series, I would imagine this is probably a pretty satisfying conclusion. So, and of course, we'll talk about the specifics of that, but I think it probably hits all those beats. I rank these all pretty consistent. I don't. They don't really do that much for me, because, as opposed to something like a Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy Krueger is, he has, a lot of personality. He has like a really wicked sense of humor. The kills that come up with that are really unique, because they're not bound to the real world, of course. He says bitch a lot. So, there's things with, with like those movies, just for instance, even within the realm of slasher movies, where I respond to it a little more, really than even like Friday the 13th or Halloween. Not that I'm saying they're totally, again, the first Halloween film is, unimpeachable, as you guys have mentioned. So, and the second one I like a lot. I was actually interested watching Kills, and I mentioned that in my review, how much Kills mirrors Halloween 2. That is the 81 Halloween 2, not Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. That's the whole other thing. Like, Rob Zombie kind of like it's like he only made 2 of them, and then there's like there are already 2 other movies of Halloween.
Yeah.
If he made one and like stopped and
Right.
then it would be one thing to be like, oh, there's 3 movies called Halloween.
Yeah.
But it's like it'd be like, okay, but he made a Halloween 2. And
Halloween 2, right?
The whole deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now there's multiple. We have to explain 2 things now. So
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob.
Yep.
So yeah, one thing I guess I'll say generally about the trilogy. I think I'm naming mainly positive things. I actually am not joking when I say this. I really like this would be a joke, but I like the way they planned this trilogy. But I really like that all 3 of these movies came out in October. I like that Kills and Ends came out on Peacock. Now, when in 2018, when Halloween came out, NBC was still, The Office was still on Netflix. And NBC says streaming services are hard. And then in the 2020s, they're like, they're hard, but we're going to figure it out because we're losing a lot of money.
Yeah.
I like that. And even that 2018 Halloween made, I think, pretty good amount of bank. And I know these Kills and Ends have done respectable at the box office as well. Having the day and date with Peacock is an experiment, of course, they're trying. But regardless, I like that all of these came out like in October, right in the spooky season and stuff. And Kills came out in 2021. This one they're doing a year later. That took some planning, of course, for them to shoot them back to back and all that stuff. But I just for these, it's such like when you have something that's seasonal like that's I think timing really matters. So I'm not sure who all at Universal was responsible for that, but kudos to them because I think it's neat to have, something new and fresh come out, especially if you're a Halloween fan. But I think even if you're not, even if you're just more of a casual fan, you can check these out and you have a good time.
Yeah, I think that the original Halloween is so ubiquitous and everything that you can go into this trilogy and just you can understand. Like it's a very good entry point for it. But it's interesting too. Like it kind of these last like couple of years now with Kills and Ends in October and then in 2018 Halloween in October as well. It just kind of on a very small scale, and we'll even probably talk about this more with VHS 99, but like it feels like it's harkens back to, that long time ago when like a few years ago, basically, when we would get like yearly Saw movies or yearly Paranormal Activity movies. And I mean, I guess Conjuring, but those were at least around like October and everything. And it's just kind of nice to have like that kind of thing. And to have it planned out as a trilogy is really satisfying. And like I said, the places that this trilogy as a whole goes and the way that it ends up and Halloween Ends is pretty significant for me as a mark of I'm not going to say elevated horror, but of just really well done horror with really interesting and thought-provoking commentary in some respects. So yeah. As for me, I basically said all everything that I can say in non-spoilers, but yeah. To talk about the relationship between Corey and Allison, it was really interesting that throughout the movie, it seemed like it was very confident of David Gordon Green to really just devote so much time to that relationship. In that, I mean, it works a lot because it is in conflict with Laurie, and it's kind of Laurie and Corey are kind of in this little like mini battle for the soul of Allison in certain respects, But really, I kind of felt like, and I don't know if you guys had the same vibe, because it's been a while since I've seen like Drive, but it just really gave me that like that Nicholas Winding Refn vibe. And especially with Drive, my memory of Drive and everything, it just had like this weird, like almost like ephemeral sort of visual style when they're like riding the motorcycle and there's like that music playing and everything. It just felt like very almost out of place, but also it communicated a lot to like what Allison is going through, why Allison is drawn to this man, and why, like, we know why he's a bad idea to get with, but you can see how she's like drawn into him and everything. And I think that really plays up, or pays off rather, her experience in the first two movies as well, and the kind of the Strode experience in the whole franchise. Yeah, so did you guys get that vibe at all, or am I just kind of off base?
It wasn't something I think I consciously noticed, but I guess I get that. Yeah, in a sort of, just kind of maybe visceral way. Just the vibe of it, of that relationship of them. There's that sort of, I don't know, that context of just kind of being out there and being out and falling in love, and in the midst of kind of chaos and weird, weirdness. But I feel like she, Allison as a character was in a weird place, and that's the whole thing about this movie, is the whole thing just has a weird kind of, it's kind of a reversed vibe. It's an odd dynamic, first of all, to get, Laurie, who has been, by all accounts, just this avenging angel, the badass. I compared her to Linda Hamilton in Terminator 2, and from the previous films, where she was just like the badass old lady, where she's like, I'm going to kill this dude. Like, he's coming for me. And everybody's like, oh, it's just my crazy grandma, and then suddenly, like, it comes to pass. And then, in the next movie, she's still resolute. And then her daughter is killed. And she's like, yeah, I'll just let it go. It didn't, that didn't land as well. We've had conversations about it off air, if that's what we call this. But it's sort of a jarring contrast to have that happen, to just have her, like, we expected to come in and her be going, yeah, I've been stalking Michael and I've got him cornered, like, I know he's out there somewhere. And instead she's just kind of like, I'm letting him go. Like, my daughter died, my son-in-law died, my granddaughter's boyfriend is dead, and all these people are dead. Let's just let it go. And it's, it was jarring and weird, and it would have been nice to have just a line of dialogue for her to say why exactly, just to verbalize it, like, this is like, I lost too much. Like, it's one thing when it's me, but that was my daughter, this is something larger than that. But I still feel like, again, this is one thing I overlook. And then that trickles down into Allison too. It would have been nice, and probably would have been within expectations for them to at least be clashing about it, to maybe have Allison like, he killed my boyfriend and my mom and my dad on, in the same night. Like, I'm gonna go hunt this son of a bitch down and set him on fire. But she didn't. She just kind of went along with it for whatever it was worth. At least, as far as we can tell, there's just not much of a. She's not really putting up much of a fight about it. Again, as gung ho as she was in Halloween Kills to go fighting, go tracking him down with people. And this one, she's very much just like, yeah, okay, I guess, let's just let it go. But again, it's that 4 years later thing where we don't know what happened in between, so we kind of just have to fill in the gaps. And I can fill those gaps in with, just as easy as anything, is like, okay, well, she really did reflecting, and she saw this chance with her granddaughter. Like, I lost my daughter. I'm going to keep my daughter's spirit alive with my granddaughter. I'm not going to let her turn into me. And so I'm going to, kind of try to take her away from this a little bit. So, I mean, that's really as much as you can do. And then that, I guess that those leaps also kind of have to come in that relationship between Corey and Allison as well, where the turns they take. You mentioned that rivalry. At first, he and Laurie were almost kindred spirits. She rescues him from some high school band nerds tormenting him and picking on him, which someone pointed out rightly is a pretty funny thing, that these days it's the band nerds that are the bullies. Yeah. But
they're hardcore, man. I can attest to that.
But it was just weird that this kid was ostensibly an adult, and these high school kids are like picking on him.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're that freak that killed the kid. We're gonna beat you up. So they were entitled, rich brats, and it was like, okay, I can kind of see it, even if it's they're being archetypes, but it just all still, I can just like look at that and go, yeah, okay, I guess let's see where we're going with this. And again, I let it work. I was ready to overlook that, and I just did, and I was like, okay, she has her reasons, he has his reasons, she has her reasons. Let's just go with it.
Yeah. Okay. Brent, did you have any of those kind of obstacles or hangups on it?
I was going to say, getting back to your point, Matt, because I kind of honed in on the kind of relationship that Corey and Allison had. I agree with you. I think there's part of this that is kind of like what you were referring to. It's kind of like an us against the world sort of thing, a very kind of young romance. A lot of it kind of very like pop punk, like if I could find you now, things would get better. We could leave this town and run forever.
Yes.
There's that sort of a thing. And I think, you mentioned that motorcycle ride, and that's, I mean, it's not even like when you're watching, it's like, oh my God, what a scene. But like, it sticks out in my mind because I don't even remember what music they're playing, but it almost sort of seems like they would play like, I don't know, like Eyes Without a Face or something, you know, like, I don't know. It's just like, it's just moody. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about with like the drive comparison.
Yeah.
With Ryan Gosling's character in that movie, he's like brooding and he's a killer in that movie as well. But he has this like affection for her and that's real. Both sides are real. It's like Beauty and the Beast sort of thing. And well, anyway, I don't want to give too much away on Drive. Allison doesn't watch him stomp someone's head in. But regardless, I think maybe that's what you were like tapping into, and I did as well. So that's the thing. I love Drive anyway, but I think that's since Corey ended up being a pretty big part of this movie, I did sort of respond to that. And I like the music in this movie too. They play Halloween by Dead Kennedys, which is a really cool song. And then the Midnight Monsters Hop, which is like it's like Monster Mash gets all the credit, and like rightfully so. It's a banger, everyone knows. But like that's like kind of a fun, like little almost like B-side sort of like forgotten novelty track. So that's one that is very early in the movie. That dude in the very beginning of the prologue plays a little bit Toccata and D as well. So like that's just spooky vibes. That's fun. So so I did like some of the musical choices here too. In terms of hangups, I don't really know. It seems so basic, but in terms of Michael Myers, the things that people say about him, metaphorically, in terms of like him being like an analogy for like a broken past, or this kind of unstoppable darkness and things like that. I think. I think it works, and I understand it. I understand where people are coming from, but to me, it's just tough because he's a guy in a mask with a knife who can just withstand a lot, as we saw in Kills. Like he gets lit up by a whole mob, and spoiler alert, ends up surviving that.
Right.
So. To me, it's like, okay, so what are we doing? And my whole so and this is not a spoiler either, but just the thing I've had an issue with in the whole franchise is like, okay, well, is he human or not? So this is getting back to like the Nightmare on Elm Street thing, where it's like he's like a demon. Like he has a backstory. He was a pedophile. He's burned down in a factory, and it's not a question of, oh well, is Freddy Krueger human? It's like, no, he's not. He's a hellish creature that is in your nightmares. That's the thing. Whereas that's something I've kind of struggled with Friday the 13th too, but especially Halloween, because I feel like Jason didn't he have like weird upgrade? He always seemed like a droided out sort of freak. I know his mom was the killer in the first one, but like especially like by the time you get to what is it, Jason X or whatever one, the recent space.
Jesus,
I'm like, he's like really been like, does he have like cryogenic like muscles or something? I don't know what's going on, but anyway, he's always like been whereas like Michael has been not always as physically imposing.
Mhm.
Although he's super strong in some. I know he cracks this guy's head in Resurrection. I remember that scene. But regardless, so it's just like, that's the thing for me. It's like, okay, I don't know if he's superhuman or not. I know Jason is in Friday the 13th because he goes to hell and comes back, and I haven't seen all of those movies either. But regardless, do I have that right?
You're not wrong, but
Right.
Yeah, no, and I know, I know I'm kind of dumping on a whole slasher genre, but subgenre. But all that to say, in these three movies, I agree with you guys. They're going for something else, and I appreciate David Gordon Green. Adding some subtext to it and trying to make it his own thing, and all the stuff I said about planning. I do think this is all thought out, and I have to say, like, in the wake of trilogies that I'm not naming any studios or whatever, but like, they don't always think out who the director is going to be, who the voice is going to be for these three sets of movies. Like, for how much money they throw at these freaking things, you'd think they would get that part really, really, really firmed up first. And so I think Universal did a great job at saying, no, like, you're the guy. You are the guy.
Yep.
You're writing these. He wrote them, co-wrote all of them and directing all of them and everything. So I applaud that. Like, in terms of that vision, that's great. And I do think there's stuff that he's doing, but again, it's all to this framework of, like, a guy and a girl and she gets away from him, and I know I'm really, 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 really oversimplifying things, but it's tough. It's tough because it's like, in some ways, if the first Halloween wasn't a huge smash, like, it would probably be like a cult favorite, and rightfully so. It's still like it's a great film, but you kind of get to it, and some of these movies, of course, they end up having more and more sequels than, God, I don't want to say deserve, because that's going to get you a lot of hate mail, than they would have initially expected.
They
would have initially anticipated.
Yeah. Well, that's also the nature of these kind of movies, is
True.
Yeah.
they're made because they're cheap to make. These are really, the David Gordon Green trilogy is really the first one that had, and I don't even know what the budget is for them. I could look it up. I'm on the page for this one, but it's not. They traditionally don't have huge budgets, and really, it would be easy to say that these are really kind of cult movies, as mainstream as they are these days, because the budget was $20 million for Halloween Kills. So that's by far. I mean, I would imagine, before Halloween 2018 would have blown away any of the budgets of the other ones. And I know, most of the middle sequels, the pre-zombie sequels, were like $3 and $4 million at most. And they often aren't huge earners. They make. I think they were making like 15 to 20 million each, which, again, if your budget's just a couple million, that's just a solid profit. So that's, that kind of is why they make them, even though, and again, why they don't pay that much attention to them. They're like, whatever, just make one. It's going to make us X number of dollars. But this one really jumped into things and got us. I mean, it made 40 million box office its opening weekend in the US and Canada, just according to IMDb. So, you double the budget right there, and whatever's on top of that is gravy. It's like,
well, and it allows them to, speaking to what you just said, it allows them to do the Peacock experiment, which this is one of the only ones that they're day and dating. I mean, you look at something like Bros, or certainly Minions, like, they're not going to put that on Peacock.
Oh, no.
They're gonna wait months and months for that. So whereas this, they're saying, well, the stakes are lower because the budget's lower, but if we can get some subscribers in the process, it's a cool deal it's neat. I actually think this is so terrible. It's a corporate term, but synergistic of them to see, like, well, we can do this. People will still come out to the theaters. Like, the horror heads will still come out to theaters, but we can still get some people that will be like, oh, the new Halloween movie's out. It's fun. Put on a candle in the fire and all that stuff. So I think that's a really smart play.
Oh, yeah.
And I had to talk my daughter into watching this at home. I was just like, I basically just sold it because we were going to go see it in the theater, for months and months before. She was like, I can't wait. And we're going to go see it in the theater. And I can't wait. And I love it. And I love it. She's a big horror fan now. And then it got to the day of, and I was like, well, we can go see it tomorrow at the theater, or we can just put it on right now. What do you think?
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, we can just watch it now. So I was like, yeah, I saved the $20, and she,
there you go.
And plus I was excited about watching it, at the moment too. So, yeah. And it's funny because that whole model is counterintuitive, but if anything, I think horror is the genre it can work in, because you have, you said, you have that built-in audience that's like, I want to go and see it. And there is something about seeing a horror movie in the theaters that it's different from, even an action movie. Some big action movies, obviously some big spectacles are things you really want to see on a big screen, but
like Black Adam
movies that yeah, exactly right. Gotta see that on the big screen.
Who wouldn't want to see that?
Right. Changing the hierarchy of the DC universe.
Yeah.
But it's not horror is that genre that everyone is just so they say if you make a horror movie, it's gonna make make a profit, right? Like, it doesn't matter if it's bad or good, if it's the best thing ever or just trash, it doesn't matter, because X number of people will see it. It'll make money as long as you keep the budget low. And it's a sure thing. But doing it in this, this is a marketable franchise, and it's and it's got a couple of bankable stars, but also it's it can still be in that relatively low budget and still maybe pull off something like this. So it'll be interesting to kind of see going forward if people continue to if the studios continue to try this out, because it seems counterintuitive to release day and date like that. And it's kind of like people are like, oh yeah, well, we're going to put it out on home video, we're going to stick it out there for free, not subscription cost streaming,
right?
And it's like, well, who's going to go see it if they have a subscription? Why would they even bother? And there's
a point of clarification, I think you have to be on a paid tier of Peacock. I think you have to be on Premium or Premium Plus. I think Premium is, so Peacock is free, but it has ads. And then there's Peacock Premium, which gives you access to more, including stuff like this. And then, but it still has ads, I think. And
I think so.
It does. And then I think, because I have Premium Plus, because Aubrey loves Dateline. So that is basically gives you the whole collection and no ads. But I think you have to have either Premium or Premium Plus for this. But regardless, people sign up for a trial, and of course Peacock or NBC or Universal hopes you forget about it. But it's neat that we're at this time now. It's cool. These movies are coming at this pretty unique time where these streaming services are really ramping up their subscription bases, and they're kind of figuring out what what is it? Orphan First Kill came out a month or two ago. And that was another one that was on Paramount Plus the same time as it was in theaters. I don't know what that movie made. I'm sure not nearly as much as Ends. Joe, I think you just watched Significant Other recently. That was one. That was one that was going to be, I think, in theaters, or was kind of between. It was kind of like they didn't know what to do with it, and so they put that on Paramount Plus. Smile originally, which did huge numbers last month, was originally going to be on Paramount Plus.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
And it did well enough not well enough. It did very well at test screenings, and they're like, no, we should just put this out, and they did, and they made money, so good for them.
Nice. Also, just random thing out here is that tomorrow, as of this recording, Barbarian hits HBO Max, which is another
I saw that
stellar horror movie this year.
I was putting together kind of a list in my head, or what, not my head, but I was like on my phone. I was going to do a post on Friday like, hey, you want to watch some scary movies? There's a lot of stuff. That's the other thing about Ends is there's just been such a wealth of horror movies, not even just this year, but just like even the past few months. I really liked Orphan First Kill for what it was. It's not really necessarily a quote unquote good movie, but it's a lot of fun. Barbarian, Pearl is a movie that I liked quite a bit, which I would technically say that's a slasher.
Yeah.
I like the new Hellraiser, although I didn't tell anyone this. That's actually the first Hellraiser movie I've ever seen. I never watched I never got to the original one, and you're not gonna watch any of the sequels if you don't watch the first one. So I liked it for what it was. It was freaking gnarly. God, those Cenobites do not fuck around. Anyway, so and there's just
Pretty rough.
plenty of others. Wendell and Wild is one that I'm really excited for. It's coming out on Friday. So that's the thing for me. It's like if I'm looking at the genre, when I'm kind of looking at all this stuff, it's like, oh man, we got crazy stuff that's happening in Barbarian that I won't spoil in this podcast segment, and you know, Pearl, and it's like this World War I thing and this cool thing, and we got like freaking this dude in a jumper and a William Shatner mask, and I'm like, I get it, I get the legacy, and I don't want to dump on you, but I'm just kind of like, sorry, need the new blood.
Yeah. I understand that, and we can kind of segue more into spoilers here in a second, but I want to preface the spoiler section by saying that one of the things that I really appreciated about Halloween Ends and the Halloween H4O trilogy is what I'm calling it, the David Gordon Green trilogy, is that
H4O, yeah.
It is that it has such it feels so special in the franchise as a whole, because Joe, like what you were saying, is that they pump out these sequels for horror franchises, especially slasher franchises, without any forethought, because they can turn a profit, and it's because it's catering to a very specific like fan base, which is not a criticism at all. I have long held a belief that the horror community is one of the like warmest and most accepting like fan communities I've ever seen. Like if you go to like a horror hound convention or something, it's like the love for the genre just it envelops everything. And so
it's sort of like metalheads being like metalhead concerts, like them being the nicest people. And you go to a stadium country show and they're all awful.
Exactly.
I'm generalizing, obviously.
Yeah. But what David Gordon Green has done successfully, in my opinion, is he has created this trilogy of films that aims to pay homage to the classics of the genre and of the franchise and everything. But with each successive entry, it has expanded into this all-encompassing sort of story that he's telling. So the first one is about that trauma, is about surviving trauma, confronting your past and moving past, or getting some kind of reprieve from the trauma that's been plaguing you from your past. It is a very like honed in one person dealing with her past and what it's done to her family and everything. And then the second movie is an extension of that, but also it has this grief baked into it where like Laurie's daughter and granddaughter are grieving her son-in-law. And then you have the whole town, which it plays into some of the stuff that happened in like Halloween's 4 and 5, I think, where they get like a lynch mob together to go after Michael. And that tells the story about the communal trauma of what Michael Myers has done to the town of Haddonfield. And then what Halloween Ends does, and I think that this is so clever and so interesting, is that it goes away from the kind of shared trauma thing and branches off into this just ever-present like energy in the town that Michael Myers has been gone for 4 years, disappeared without a trace. No one knows where he is, nothing. It's established at the end, very pointedly at the end of Kills, that he is basically immortal or supernatural in some way because he should have died, but he didn't. So he is this looming specter across Haddonfield, and it has infected the entire town in ways that are just, it's so visceral, and the way that the storyline plays out, especially with regard to Laurie and Allison and Corey, just feels like a perfect meld of that kind of all-encompassing like communal energy of a communal infection of sorts, and the kind of honed in like personal tension and drama of saving the soul of someone you love, essentially. So it's such an interesting thing. It's these three movies are an interesting outlier of a franchise that has, movies like any other slasher franchise that has movies where the beginning of each movie has to explain why he's still alive from the last movie.
Yes.
And I just found this to be so just so interesting to me and thought-provoking.
I actually, I talked to, again, my podcasting partner, Austin Glidden on Medium Cool. We talked about this movie, and it kind of occurred to me as we were going along that this is sort of a September 11th kind of parable in a lot of ways. There's, or maybe if you want to make it a little smaller, like a school shooting kind of parable.
Oh yeah.
Where, and I think those two can be linked together, and I think that's kind of what I want to do almost here is there's this trauma that an entire community has, an entire country has, and what's the aftermath of that? They in one, obviously in the case of this film, it's Michael Myers going on a rampage and killing people, but he went on the rampage 40 years ago, and there were just a couple of people who were really affected by it. And then he comes back, and the entire town essentially is devastated by it. And how many people did he kill? And between those two movies, it's easy to forget that was the same night. He killed upwards of 20 people or more. And then suddenly there are these years that have passed where everyone's dealing with that. And in a town like Haddonfield, everyone knows everyone, right? Or there's a or at least you're not going to go far without finding somebody that certainly someone knows these people. Yeah. So it kind of did this thing that September 11th did to us as a country, and that's turned some of us into kind of hardened, I don't want to say raving lunatics, but raving lunatics. And they start making these kind of wild and outlandish conclusions that allows really bizarre things to happen societally. And and that's the thing I kept thinking, every time there were the kids who approach Corey, and they're like, oh, you're the one who killed the kid he was babysitting. And then Laurie goes through that with at the outside the grocery store, where the woman approaches her and is like, it's your fault that Michael Myers stabbed my sister because you were tempting him with your whatever, and it's like, these are ridiculous assertions to make. Like, how could it have possibly been her fault? How could she possibly have had anything to do with him, escaping from the mental institution and going on a rampage? It's like all she's done is like mind her own business for for 40 years. But somebody's going to find a way to blame it on someone else, because this is what we're looking for, is in some ways, is someone to blame, is to make someone the boogeyman for us. So it was really interesting watching it with that in mind, because I watched Halloween Ends again after I talked about it. I've watched it twice anyway since it premiered, and it's kind of interesting to watch it from that perspective, to see this is the way people deal with this grief and this trauma. And it's some people go inward, and some people go externally, and I think that's kind of like the toxicity in America these days kind of mirrors Haddonfield, especially in Halloween Ends, when everyone's still kind of devastated, and still they never got the justice they wanted from Michael Myers. So they are looking for people to blame, and the other people to blame, and how this is what kids these days are like, and this is what that's how, and that's those parallels are pretty striking and pretty poignant, I think, in this movie especially. So I that's really the biggest thing I thought, that we make these, it's funny because we make those connections, going back to Scream, where Jamie Kennedy's character Randy, he made the rules for surviving a horror movie, and talked about sex equals death, and drugs equal death, and it's like that's kind of a common theme through those movies. But even if you talk to John Carpenter about the original Halloween, he said he never intended on that to be in an allegory. That he even said the reason that Michael Myers killed those other characters is just because they weren't really paying attention to him being there. And Laurie's character it wasn't because she was a virgin or because she was pure of heart. So we kind of manufactured those, those rules or those lessons from horror movies. But here, David Gordon Green is kind of turning that around and baking them into his movies. And I think that was, I think that was pretty cool. It was certainly and certainly did it in a more modern way.
Yeah, I think John Carpenter is obviously an amazing filmmaker, but I think there are times there's that whole thing when you mentioned the elevated horror thing, and he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I do think that it's funny that he made such a brilliant film in Halloween, and then in the 80s, The Thing, and all sorts of other like incredible movies. But I think like with the way that film discourse is now and like just how prevalent it is, like I'm guessing, but he seems kind of exhausted just by how much, because like he made a movie that's so, it's like Velvet Underground and Nico or whatever. It's like, where everyone who saw it made a slasher movie or whatever. Yeah. And so he kind of was creating this template that I don't even know if he knew he was making for this whole subgenre. So it's just it's funny, but David Gordon Green was one of those people who saw that movie, and he's like, these are the things he's drawing from it. And I think that's interesting. I want to talk in spoilers. I want to follow up on what you were talking about, Joe, about the sort of these as sort of a 3-part kind of reaction to 9/11. I think it's really interesting. Metaphor, allegory.
Yeah, let's go into spoilers actually, and let's dig in deeper into that. So, like I said, we're going to go into spoilers, so check the show notes for timestamps and all of that stuff, but we're going to play a clip from the trailer and then go into spoilers for Halloween Ends. Before we do that, just round the table, what did you guys rate it on Letterboxd out of 5 stars?
What did I give it? I think I gave it 4 stars. Nice. Yeah, I was very into it, and I thought that it was fantastically done overall. 4 is what I gave it.
Nice. And Brent?
I gave it 2.5, but I'll qualify that by saying I gave Halloween 2018 and Kills 2.5. So if you like those movies, then you know that I'm an idiot. And more to the point, you'll probably like this because I think for what it's doing within this trilogy, I think it is a satisfying conclusion about a trilogy with characters that I don't want to say I don't care about. That's too flip, but that with an antagonist, following an antagonist that I don't have the same sort of affection for as everyone else. Gotcha. That's the way I would say it.
Well said.
But if you like the Halloween movies, I think of course you'll see this one, but I think you'll enjoy it.
Nice. Well said. I rated it 3.5 stars, but honestly, I could kind of see it going up to 4 upon rewatching it, but for now it's 3.5, and I rated 4 stars for both Halloween and Halloween Kills. So let's go ahead and go into spoilers for Halloween Ends. I'm going to play a clip from the trailer, and then we're going to spoil the movie.
I was certain that I saw him watching me.
You pretend like you moved on, but you're actually just obsessed with death.
What are you gonna do when Michael comes back for you? Because he is coming.
But this time, something feels different. He's more dangerous.
So, spoilers on for Halloween Ends, and let's talk about the kind of 9/11 parable or parallels and everything, and kind of the communal trauma sort of thing. So, Joe, did you want to expound on that, or Brent, did you want to follow up on it?
Yeah. Well, if you look back on any of these, and and these are happening, these kind of events. Obviously, September 11th, 2001 was unparalleled probably in American history in terms of just a massive trauma that kind of, happened to, to the entire country. Everyone was affected by it. And you couldn't really help but be affected by it. And, the ramifications of that kind of echo through today. And it changed the way we talk to each other. It changed the way we look at the world. It changed the way we argued politically. And it morphed, if you look at it in terms of politics, it morphed politics from, this thing where, and I remember when I was younger, it was always like, well, your grandpa is going to say racist things and people are going to be upset and say things you don't agree with in this or that, but everybody just kind of dealt with it. And kind of in the wake of that, in the years to follow, there's those disagreements became much more pronounced and families have been, estranged from each other. I mean, that's happened to me and that's happened to, millions, I'm sure, thousands and thousands of other families in the world where relationships were adversely affected in a real way to the point that people stopped talking to each other. And that's kind of, so that's how I looked at this, was that it changed the town from a small town. It was a small town that wasn't equipped to handle a trauma like this. It's, and if you look at a lot of the people, even, you even look at the Tommy Doyle character and all of them, they're all these working class people who, are just kind of, the values they would have are like, oh, if you hurt yourself, rub some dirt on it and go back out.
Yeah.
Don't express your feelings. And, that was, pre 9/11, that was, still prevail. I mean, it was, feelings were changing, but that was still kind of the prevailing sentiment of, a man does this and a woman does this. And after that kind of very quickly morphed and changed, and society in some ways became better and in some ways became worse. There's an acceleration of people who were like, we need to accept everyone for who they are. And if you look at like how quickly gay rights have moved, the kind of the trans community, like all of these things, even in the 90s, there were movies making transgender jokes and having characters as transgender jokes, and now everyone, it's kind of like, no matter who you are, accept these people. And then on the other side of that, it's those people who think that there's something wrong with that are much more vitriolic about it now. And at least, well, I mean, in a different way, I guess you could argue that pre 9/11, there were still hate crimes and people being killed for being gay, but now everyone just seems kind of embittered by it. Those people who maybe would have, if not participated in those kinds of crimes, they would have at least shrugged a little bit more. Now they just kind of whine bitterly about it. So there's a lot of so there's just a lot of that. It's just kind of the toxicity level has risen, even if some of those actions are those actions that were standing up and saying, no, we're not going to deal with this anymore, you're going to stop doing this stuff. It's and that's how Haddonfield is in a lot of ways. It's you see these things where people could be like, oh, that poor guy. Now they're all like, oh, that's the dude that killed that's the dude that killed the kid. Like, look at that. Like, sure, the courts exonerated him, but I don't believe them. So there's just a lot of that kind of prevails. So I mean, I've kind of gone on long enough about that. I'll let you guys
well, I was just going to say, Joe, based on what you were saying, because I hadn't really thought of the 9/11 thing, but I was kind of working it out. Whereas, okay, if it's about, something traumatic happens, Halloween is, trying to move on and prepare for the next steps. I was thinking towards, the reason I want to say this in spoilers is to the very end, when Michael Myers is in the like industrial shredder or whatever, and it's like he's done. Is that SEAL Team 6? Is that Osama bin Laden being shot? Everyone's seeing his body. No, I mean it. I'm serious. Like, if that logically, like, because I don't think the movie, of course, it's not like a 1-to-1 maybe parable for everything, but is everyone finally seeing the body and like seeing it shred, and it's like he's done. And I remember when Osama bin Laden, when it was announced that he was killed, there was this sort of sigh of relief. I
Yeah.
feel like not just nationally, but across the whole world, where it's like, okay, like you kind of feel like you, in a certain way, you're not totally over it, but that chapter has been at least closed, which would kind of make Kills the Iraq War, I suppose, and would have Corey being other jihadists that rose up as the result of 9/11.
Yeah,
And I'm totally spitballing.
Well, but yeah, and maybe. Well,
and it's not a one-to-one parable.
Yeah, it certainly isn't. But I also look at it in terms of like a school shooter.
Right.
When school shootings, have become this thing, and every time there's one, there's we have the same kind of circular arguments about it, right? Like,
right.
And I think that all has kind of grown out of that same sentiment. If everybody had a gun, then everything would be better. And I mean, you look at Halloween Kills as that, right? Like that's kind of that logic where, Tommy Doyle went out and gave everybody a gun, and they all ran the streets, and like, how did that work out for them?
Yeah.
And it didn't. But I very much looked at Corey Cunningham as kind of was made into a school shooter. You go back to Columbine and you go back to all of these other school shootings, and it always seemed like the prevailing sentiment is, oh, this is a kid who's bullied, and this is a kid, these kids were mercilessly bullied, and they had absentee parents or overbearing parents, and obviously Corey had that as well. It kind of, I think it all kind of, the trauma part of that kind of all feeds into it together. So yeah, you're right. It certainly is. It kind of picks and chooses that a little bit, and it's not. I think it's more the aftermath of it, the way that people deal with a massive trauma, than it is a direct parable of the two of them.
Right. Well, what were you guys saying about the Corey Cunningham, the name? Because I don't know what you guys are talking about.
So my kind of thought was that, and Joe, I don't know if you're going to be on the same wavelength or slightly different, but my thought of it, because I know that you're a bit more in touch with the horror like genre, I think, than I am, but I kind of got a kick out of the fact that his name is Corey Cunningham, because Cunningham is the name of, I can't remember his full name, but he's the guy that made Friday the 13th.
Yeah, and Sean S. Cunningham.
S. Cunningham. There you go.
Yeah,
And Friday the 13th was an unabashed just rip off of Halloween. Like Friday the 13th was like they saw Halloween and they did that same thing. Same opening kill, essentially just, point of view slasher kill and all of that. So that's great. And I just love the idea that the character in this movie, who doesn't necessarily take up the mantle of Michael Myers, but is trying to emulate Michael Myers and try to do the Michael Myers thing, is named Cunningham. I loved that as like a nod to the horror genre in the history.
As Cunningham was the fake John Carpenter. Yeah, Corey Cunningham is the fake Michael Myers.
Yep. So I got a kick out of that.
I like that as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and we were directly on the same page.
Nice.
Yeah, I didn't know the creator of Friday the 13th. So I missed that joke. But
and similarly to John Carpenter, he kind of sort of begged off of the series before too long, and it went on without him. And then he returned sort of later on. For like Jason Goes to Hell, I think he was an executive producer, so he had a hand in it, but he didn't, come back and direct one. Again, John Carpenter kind of did the same thing. He washed his hands of it, and then later on, kind of gave his blessing and I think he always made money off of those movies, but he wasn't really excited about participating in the process.
Yeah,
and then he kind of came back, and I don't think he had much to do with these, but the checks cashed just as well. So
right.
So I want to ask you guys about Corey, because like this is the stuff I get hung up like with, again, this movie and even this trilogy and maybe even this whole franchise or whatever. So the idea that Michael is hiding out in the sewers, Corey goes down there, Michael is about to kill him. Is the idea that he transfers his Michaelness to him, like, is it, what I'm getting at is it an ethereal, or not ethereal, but like a supernatural thing where he is literally like bestowing him with this darkness? Or is it just because like they're almost like a team at a certain point,
Yeah.
and like I'm kind of like, okay, like what does Michael get out of him being like usurped or passed on? I just, that was a part, kind of a, what ends up to me being kind of a critical component of it that I just couldn't connect.
Yeah.
I think for me, sorry, my interpretation of it, and Joe, you can expound on this too, because I'm sure you have a better idea for it. But my thought process of that was that, one, it is kind of, it is a very, very clear nod to the end of Halloween 4, in which Michael basically transfers the power and the evil over to his niece, who then goes and kills her mother in the closing of Halloween 4. And so I feel like it's a nod to that, but also I kind of feel like this is going to be, this is going to be unclear, but, or this is going to be a mess as I'm trying to explain it. But basically I kind of see their pseudo partnership as being like, on one hand, I kind of see it as Michael being like, "Ooh, yeah, I'm like the Joker. I want to see the world burn. So let's do, like, you go and do my bidding and everything." But on another front, like a more metaphorical level, I see it as Corey being given not necessarily a one-to-one transfer of the evil of Michael Myers or anything, but just he's given a push into that. And he's already an embattled soul, basically, as is established throughout the movie up to that point. But that push is what leads him to feel empowered enough to just destroy things in his wake and murder and kill and everything. And I kind of like the idea of Michael being a presence in those scenes with him, or even an accomplice in some, or what have you. I see that as being, and this might be too direct a metaphor, but see that as being Michael being like a physical embodiment of the evil that is plaguing Haddonfield, and it is manifesting in Corey's actions and everything. And it's kind of, shall I say that Michael is the shape of evil, and he's just like, it's a visual representation of him just infecting, the town of Haddonfield with evil and kind of craziness. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would go along with that to an extent. And I think it was probably purposely vague. If you look at the, that moment when he grabs him and he kind of look, they kind of look in each other's eyes, and Michael sees this flash of all of the things that have happened to him. Is that like a weird psychic connection?
Oh yeah.
It's like, I wondered if it was it just like a representation of them? Like he looks in his eyes and sees the evil that he has. Is there like a, like you said, Brent, like a transference? It's kind of vague. I kind of saw it as he recognized, evil recognizes evil, and he saw it and was like, oh, like I could do something with this.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, and it is even, it's nice also the way that they almost make the kill scenes where they're both participating. It's not a direct like, hey Michael, come on buddy, let's go kill some shit. It's like Corey went out to do the killing, and even in that first time when they go to the doctor's house with the doctor and the nurse, he's wearing like a clown mask, which is sort of reminiscent of what Michael wore in the original Halloween. He wore like a clown outfit, but it was a different sort of mask. But it also kind of resembles the mask that Rob Zombie's Michael Myers wore as a child.
Oh yeah.
So there's a couple of those little nods, but it's also, also when the girl is running away, like Michael is there behind her, so it's almost like, I don't know that Corey necessarily was like, come on, let's go, we'll be partners, I'll be your Robin. But it's like, it's like, and he does tell him at one point to teach him how to do it. But it still is very much like he almost wills it. Corey almost wills it to happen. That it doesn't make much sense for Michael to want an apprentice, or like why does he care? But at the same time, I also looked at it as Michael being vulnerable at first. When he grabs him, he's not necessarily strong enough just to overpower him. And Corey coming around kind of, he was breaking down. And if you look at him, even after he lets him go, he's kind of hunched over and he's limping around. He still is selling those injuries he got 4 years before. He's kind of a broken down old man, to kind of Laurie's point later on in the film. And as he's able to start killing again, he's kind of reinvigorated, and he's energized by that, and starts to get, he does the kill against the wall where he picks the girl up and stabs the knife through her.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. It's kind of like passing the baton, the knife.
But then later on, when Corey takes the mask, he very easily overpowers him. And Corey is not a big, strong guy by any means, but he pretty quickly overpowers him and basically rips his mask off and takes off. And it's like, that's some disrespectful shit to do to Michael Myers,
That's what I was almost thinking in this movie. Again, I'm of two minds, because like I obviously these aren't necessarily my wheelhouse, but I see these movies too from the other side. I'm like, man, are like people going to be cool with that? Like Halloween. What I mean is like, well, Halloween fans be okay with like this new character who we've never met before, like going toe to toe with Michael and all that stuff. So I don't know, but I mean, I think within the context of what you just said, Joe, that's okay. I think that would probably be okay. And so the other one too, in the salvage yard, that's kind of one of the other big set pieces in terms of kind of killings. Like there's that one shot where he ends up shooting or someone else. One of the bullies ends up shooting the salvage yard guy, and like Corey disappears. That was an awesome shot. That was probably my favorite shot in the whole movie, because it's that whole idea of like kind of what you guys are talking about, that like violence begets violence, and like even if Michael or Corey doesn't stab them or get them somehow, that they'll kind of get each other. So I like that as kind of a really, really it's a quick shot, but it's just like a neat sort of visual metaphor. And then that pretty brutal shot with the blowtorch to the mouth, but then showing the other character doing the push in, like it's like that's brutal, and you can see it. But the focus is on this other character who's already pinned. It's like that was a series of shots that I really, really loved in this. So yeah, that stuff definitely worked.
Yeah, that blowtorch to the mouth, by the way. I have a theory as another homage to Friday the 13th Part 5, where the imposter Jason sticks a road flare in someone's mouth to kill them.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that was another thing. I was like, oh, and I even said that to my daughter. I was like, hey, yeah, that's an homage to Part 5. Remember when and she's like, oh yeah,
nice.
See that road flare. I want to say one other thing too. This is like not, again, I don't know. This, I probably should have said non-spoilers. This actually might be, and now that of course we're talking about it, this might be my favorite of the three, I think, actually. But I would say the thing I talked about with Allison and Corey, I don't really have a ton more to add to that. I just like their romance and their connection. But Laurie and Will Patton's character's name, the sheriff.
Right. Yeah.
They have a few scenes together. I love that whole thing of Will Patton's sheriff learning Japanese and picking up a guitar. And I wanted to hear an original song. I wanted them over the end credits or something, kind of like Gran Torino. I wanted Will Patton to sing like some song that he had learned with Japanese lyrics. I thought that would have been awesome, but he didn't. But that's okay. But I just like, again, stuff like that. It's sort of, I like that part of it, of trying to buy the house in town and trying for normalness, like trying for a return to normal that he's striving for and that Laurie is striving for. She's writing a memoir, which we hear in voiceover, which someone Someone on Twitter said they were being snarky. They said it's like, good job on Laurie for writing a memoir that was composed all of last paragraphs. Because every voiceover that she does is like very much like, but it is what it is. But I do like the idea of not just them moving on separately with their own lives, but the very last scene in this movie is them sitting on the porch. So I thought that was sweet. Like I don't know. It's a sweet slasher movie. What can I say?
Yeah,
right.
It's a good slasher movie for Valentine's Day, I suppose. But but there is something there too about kind of what you're talking about. Sort of trying to move on, and I think that is therapeutic. Watching this dude get thrown in this industrial shredder by the end, which is that's after the 2 knives to the hands, and then she slits his throat, and somehow he still ends up, he rips his hand through anyway. Yeah. Just to try to choke Allison.
Gruesome.
My favorite part of that was, of the macabre things that I've heard in my life. The one thing my stepdad always talked to me about was how in the movies, they when someone's trying to commit suicide and they slash their wrists, they always go this way, kind of parallel with the base of their hand. And he was always like, nobody's going to bleed to death from that. Like you have to cut vertically along the vein to open the whole vein up, and that's exactly what Laurie does. And I was like, it reminded me of my stepdad, first of all, and then I was like, also, that's a smart move, like blood can't clot, in a vein that's open that much. And she absolutely knew that, and it was such just such a like off the cuff kind of moment. It wasn't like there was some mention early in the movie of slashed her wrist, but went along the forearm instead of just across the wrist. So
it's funny because that's how I can tell I grew up in really like a certain emo era, because don't cross the street, don't cross the sidewalk, go down the street. Something I heard maybe in 6th grade, which is really messed up. But that's what you just said, but in a cheekier phrase, sadly. Anyway, that's just
and kind of on that similar topic, the entire let's talk about the showdown between Laurie and Michael proper, because that is what the movie has been marketed as and everything, and it is the last time that Jamie Lee Curtis will play Laurie Strode and go up against Michael Myers, and that's monumental and everything. What I loved about it is how, the actual like back and forth and the fighting and everything, fine, it was cool, it was good. But what I really liked about it is how, and really this is going back to her encounter with Corey, but like when she has the falling out with Allison, and then she sets everything up to where she calls about a suicide, and then she's doing this whole song and dance about it. And then I just loved that like move where it's like, oh no, I'm not going to kill myself. I'm here to I'm just reeling you in, like you get the fuck out or whatever. I loved that. But I did I also just really liked the conclusion of the battle for Allison, basically, and Laurie and Michael Myers. It was overall really satisfying in the end. So
I thought it was oddly satisfying for as short as it was. But if you look at you go back to H2O, like that was a badass knockdown, drag out. Like, it was a traditional scene, and Michael's stalking her, and she's running, and she's also fighting back. And then, of course, the great ending, where she lops his head off with an axe, is like, that's, there's 3 really great Halloween endings. The first one, of course, where he's gone. Part 4, when that you referenced earlier, after where Jamie Lloyd, who, by the way, I don't know if you guys even remember this, is supposed to be Jamie Lee Curtis's daughter, or Laurie Strode's daughter, who was orphaned, and the woman she kills and I think she didn't actually kill her once they get into part 5. She just like wounded her. She stabbed her in a very Michael-esque way. Great cliffhanger.
She killed her. I think
she stabbed her with a pair of scissors.
Yeah.
And then in part 5, you get a very quick line of, she didn't kill her, she just attacked her.
Oh,
and
okay.
she survived.
Yeah.
But then she's not even in the foster parents are not even in the sequel at all.
Right.
They're like out of town, and it's part 5 is an abomination on so many levels. But,
Yeah.
and that is a fun thing that Halloween at least did perpetually was, I mean, into its, sometimes to a bad degree, is try to make a story that continues on.
Mhm.
It's like, there's the Tommy Jarvis saga in Friday the 13th, but then it's mostly, just like random groups of teenagers. But
Yeah.
in Halloween, it kind of builds, it's like the Laurie Strode story throughout until, even Resurrection is the one where it deviates because,
Mhm.
Laurie's killed at the beginning, and then it, just is like, oh, here's a new group of kids.
Yeah.
But this is the place where they had that full continuation, and then David Gordon Green's like, no, forget all that.
Yeah.
But then there's still these little touches that kind of allude to some of those things. So
Yeah.
it's just, it was, and I'm not even sure where I'm at right now, what I'm trying to say, but that's kind of the whole thing is, we had all that,
Mhm.
all of the big one-on-one showdowns. This one was oddly toned down, and
Mhm.
it wasn't a big dramatic moment where he died. She's just, she like literally like drops the refrigerator on him. He's pinned, and she just very calmly slits his throat, and
Yep.
then then slices his forearm. Although that moment where Allison grabs his arm and like breaks it is pretty gruesome, and it's pretty cool and gruesome, but it's
Mhm.
also strangely, I don't know. It's another mark, I guess, another indication that Michael is now just an old man who can be overpowered. So.
True. So a couple of things that one thing I didn't get and one thing that I didn't like. Will Patton's character, I wish had more to do. And
Yeah.
I felt like the first 2 movies, especially Halloween Kills, it sets up this traumatic past for him. This
Yes.
horrific mistake that he made when he tried to take down Michael Myers himself. And he's carried that with him for 40 years now. I was so certain that this movie was going to end up with him at least like trying to do something redemptive to that end, but he's damn near just a cameo in just a few scenes.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was just such a peculiar choice for the movie, for the trilogy as a whole, to set up such a pivotal moment for a character and then just not do anything with that in the 3rd installment, because I felt like that fell completely by the wayside for me, and that was a disappointment for me.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree. And they went to that all that trouble of adding those couple, like recreating the whole 1978.
Yeah.
And and showing his role, and then all of a sudden here they're just like, whatever. He doesn't, he doesn't need it.
Yeah.
He's happy where he's at.
Yep. And the thing that I didn't understand, I didn't necessarily get why Laurie kept the mask on the coffee table at the end. I didn't even notice it the first time I saw it, but then I went back and played it again, and the Michael's mask is just on her coffee table, and it's like the last scene. I don't understand like the significance of that, like what that's trying to tell us. I don't know. Did you guys have any takes on that?
Yeah, I didn't really, other than those last shots were mirroring the end of the original Halloween, where you see inside the rooms, you see that you see the empty rooms where he had been terrorizing her, and as kind of the last shots, and I know that like I said, that's another callback to that, but I took the mask sitting there as it was like her keepsake or something. It was like her final victory, but I don't know, maybe there's something more to that.
Okay.
I just took it to be a trophy, but I don't know. And that they hang on that shot for long enough where I recognized it to be able to scan the room. But if they had cut it a few seconds before, I don't think I would have noticed it. So
yeah. Interesting. I think that I think that my rationale for it would be, it just shows that the power is gone. Like, it's just a mask now. It's not the shape. It's not Michael. Which I can appreciate, but I thought it was a little too vague for my taste.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else we want to talk about in spoilers for Halloween Ends?
Boy, I think we've gone on for quite a while.
I think so too.
It's got to ends at some point.
Yes. All right. Well, that is our review of Halloween Ends. How would you guys rank the trilogy itself now that it's complete?
I think your comment about it being the best, 3-film, sequence in the franchise is certainly true. They, 78 and 2, if there had been a decent 3, would have, may have challenged it, but certainly 4, 5, 6, like as they're calling it, the Thorn trilogy these days. Again, I love 4. I think 4 is a very underrated, just an underrated movie. I mean, it's low budget and bad in a lot of ways, but the suspense of it is pretty strong, and it evokes a lot of the original. I think more than people want to admit, and but 5 is miserable, and 6 is maybe even worse. Paul Rudd notwithstanding. H2O is. I might call H2O a little bit overrated. I know you said you love it, but I think it's for me, again, you hit it on the head calling it the Scream of of Halloween crossed by Scream, down to Kevin Williamson as the screenwriter. And, it was fine. I didn't dislike it, but I think it was, for its time, it was fine, but it still looks a movie of its time very much. If you watch it today, it looks very late 90s.
Oh yeah.
And then the film that follows it is pretty miserable.
Oh yeah.
That's the one with Busta Rhymes, right? Resurrection.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. where he he knows kung fu because he likes karate movies. So he can kung fu fight Michael Myers in the next karate movie. But yeah, it's it's certainly the best of those. If you break it down into those little segments. So I mean, I don't know if I can give a trilogy a star ranking, but it's I heartily enjoyed it. It's a very pleasant surprise. So
nice.
And I will recommend them for a while. It'll be fun to see what kind of history calls it, how history looks at it, 10 or 15 years down the road.
I agree. My voice just cracked so bad, but I agree.
I didn't even notice it.
Brent, how about you?
I love Season of the Witch. That is my answer. That is my rebuttal. No, I don't
Tom
really.
Atkins is amazing.
I don't really have. I haven't seen enough of these movies to be able to see. Talking with you guys, I can see where this would be a trilogy that was laid out in a meaningful way and has purpose. And like I said, even though, quite frankly, I don't necessarily like these movies for me in terms of my tastes, I think that history will probably be kind to them. I do think they're, at least now, like, there aren't things in it where I'm like, oh, that's really cheesy or whatever. Like, it's not. And I think they are built pretty well as movies in terms of like budget and all that. So like, I think they'll age fine there. And I mean, history will probably maybe even, I think they'll age much better even than some of the other ones. It's just not necessarily my sort of thing. I've seen a decent amount of slashers, but I haven't seen like, 4, 5, and 6 in this series and that sort of thing. It's quite frankly, I mean, it's a bit of a disposable subgenre for me. And to say that these are kind of movies that I would watch on AMC, like, 31 Days of Halloween or whatever. And they'd kind of be on in the background. And in a way, it's kind of a pro and con, because it's like, oh, it's kind of cool that I've seen bits and pieces of them, but it's also like, because they're kind of, has sort of taken for granted a little bit, that I don't maybe like sit down and watch them as often, that I don't value them as much as I could. So that's kind of the kind of trade-off there. But yeah, I definitely get the fan base, and as far as I can tell, it seems like it's probably a pretty satisfying ending for people who are really into the series.
Nice. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, I love this trilogy. I really do. So I think my affinity for it and my affection for it will grow as I revisit it in the future.
Good.
So that is our review of Halloween Ends. We do plan on still doing VHS 99, but I just kind of want to do we can just do a quick spoiler thing for that. Maybe go like segment by segment and then call it a night. Does that work for you guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds fun.
All right, cool. So we are done talking about Halloween Ends. Let us know what you thought and everything. Now we're going to go into a spoiler review of VHS 99, which is currently streaming on Shudder. The premise is witness a hellish vision of 1999 as social isolation, analog technology, and disturbing home videos fuse into a nightmare of found footage savagery.
That is frightening.
Yes.
I just pooped my pants.
So we're gonna kind of touch on each segment, but I'm gonna play a clip from the trailer just because I have it queued up. So here's a clip from the trailer from VHS 99, and then we will be spoiling the latest in the found footage anthology series.
And welcome back! This is a very special episode.
Spend the night in a coffin.
Lily! Lily!
The faster you breathe, the faster you use up your air, so you can't panic.
We have ourselves a winner!
So VHS 99 is the fifth entry in the VHS franchise. We'll kind of go around and talk about our history with the franchise. I'll kind of start with VHS when it came out in 2012 or something. I was very excited about it. I went to a midnight screening at Keystone Art here in Indy, and I saw it, and it was one of the first found footage movies that actually made me feel a little bit motion sickness. I was just kind of lukewarm on it. And then VHS 2 came out, and I was more enamored with the idea of an anthology movie based in found footage storytelling that it was like this maybe a yearly tradition. And then it went into VHS Viral, which I don't know if you guys saw it, but is borderline unwatchable for me. It is god awful. I have no idea I don't know. But anyway, then last year, they released VHS 94, which I didn't get around to seeing last year, but I watched it, before watching 99, and that movie was amazing. There's some really great segments in that. It was fresh. It was new. It felt like they knew what they were doing, and the collection of segments were incredible. And then, yeah, I love that. And I was just excited that this franchise was rejuvenated. And now we have VHS 99. Next year, we'll have VHS 85, which is going to be cool.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. And, so let's talk in spoilers about VHS 99. What did you guys think of the movie and your thoughts on the franchise and everything up to this point?
Well, for me, I had only seen the first one.
Oh, nice.
I really enjoyed the first one. I thought it was, I thought there were a couple of legitimately really scary entries in it. The vampire girl one especially was the one that stands out in my memory. And I remember watching. And it's funny, I don't remember that much about it. I remember the grainy VHS look of it. I remember a couple of good scares, a couple of nice kind of low budgety gore effects that really kind of hit home. And then, but I didn't watch any of the others. And then I watched this one, and I kind of just felt like it felt like a retread of that. Again, that first one, which I think I saw in 2013. the formula. I saw the formula for sure. Once it gets going, and the kind of the interesting thing I think about the first one especially was that it was the different filmmakers making it, and each one of them kind of felt different to an extent. Here, the stories are different, but it still is like a filmmaking template that it's like we have the tracking, the tracking fuzz, and that kind of happens every once in a while. We get some weird, it's a grainy kind of look. It looks like it's filmed on VHS, and there's like some douchebag kids who are doing something douchebaggy, and then there's like, oh, here's a legend, or here's an urban legend, and then it turns out that urban legend is true, and it's in the form of this like very like creepy monster that will at some point like be very close to the camera and show you the effects, and there'll be a couple of like gore shots, and then now we go on to the next one. And I mean that as a criticism, but also not, there's something to be said for a couple of these entries. The template of it was distracting to me, but I felt like there were a couple of fun stories that, some of them are, of course, like the urban legend one, the sorority one, somehow felt pretty fresh. The one that you guys pointed out as your favorite was the one with the game show, the kid game show, the Nickelodeon style show, which I ended up being disappointed at, but just because I wanted it to be more. I wanted the first segment to be the macabre video game or the macabre game show, and then I wanted another segment that ended up kind of being the second half of that. I wish they had done it that way instead of making it just kind of cramming it into one segment.
Yeah, me too.
I think it would have been much more effective. I thought it was because I watched this with my daughter, and she she was like there's a scene where the girl like breaks her leg like really in a really gruesome way going through these obstacles, and my daughter was just like, well, how did that happen? And I was like, well, I mean, I kind of see how it happened, but it also seems a bit far-fetched. And I think part of that was just that they didn't do a good enough job of establishing the safety protocols of that game show. And it just ended up being too much. Like I got what they were doing because I was a huge fan of Double Dare as a kid, like Double Dare and what was the other one we said was Tales of
Legends of the
Hidden Temple. Yeah.
Which I never really watched it, but I certainly like I was aware of it, and I got the visual vibe that they got, that they took from that. And I don't know the layout of the show, but the going through messy, gross obstacles and grabbing flags was the hallmark of Double Dare. For many years. So that was more what I took from it. So it was pretty cool to see like the douchey game show host and you go through that whole thing. But the kind of the revenge plot didn't really, and plus coupled with the climax and the ultimate resolution of what the girl's wish ended up being, it took as they were like walking through the cave, I was kind of just like, what if her wish is like her mom is like more overbearing than we see, and she just like kills everybody? I was like, what if that happens? And then sure enough, like that's what she does at the end, and I'm like, oh, okay, well that wasn't much of a
sharp. You got it.
Yeah.
But I would have loved to. It would have the kind of dark comedy of it would have been played up a little more if they had just let it be a dark comedy and not tried to worry about the scares part, and just let it be a weird creep show sort of thing. If you guys are familiar with creep show, it's sort of the 80s version of this. And there were some of them that were meant to be scary, and then some of them were just meant to be like there was a couple that were like kind of touching, and then there was one that was just sort of was just kind of supposed to be darkly funny, and I think that's what this one was going for, but I think they also kind of got caught up in the let's be gross and do horror stuff, and it could have just been more. They could have done away with a lot of that and the grotesque like cave person and just had it like, you get this wish, and she's like, I want my horrible family to die and everybody to die, like that would have been it would have been a little more satisfying to me. So found that one disappointing. I don't want to just go through the whole thing, but I'll stop there for now and let you guys chime in on something.
Sure. Brent, how about you? Your history and what you think?
Yeah, I saw the first VHS, I think in 2012. The second one came out like really pretty soon after. I saw
Yeah.
both of them. I like the first one quite a bit. And if you go back and you look at that roster, 10 years later, you have Ty West, David Bruckner, Joe
Yep.
Swanberg, Radio Silence, who they've
Mhm.
made, like the Ready or Not
Yeah.
and the new Scream movie.
Yeah, 5
So, like that's a pretty solid class of,
Yeah.
2012 or whatever. So that's neat watching that all sort of come into fruition, pay off. I like the first one quite a bit. Amateur Night, the vampire one, which I believe is the one David Bruckner did, was definitely the standout when we were talking about it the other night. I was like, I haven't seen that movie in 10 years, but I remember that sequence.
Oh,
that was
yeah.
great.
Oh, yeah.
And the second one, apparently I did not like it. I rated it pretty low on Letterboxd. I have not seen it since, so I'd really have to go back and check. Didn't see Viral or 94, although I'm kind of interested based on how much you liked it, Matt. But this one I generally liked overall. I would say Ozzy's Dungeon was by far my favorite. It was directed and co-written by Flying Lotus, who's he's kind of like Thundercat in that he collaborates a lot, like, and he does mainly like electronic like IDM, I guess I'd say, but there's a lot of hip hop collaborations and things like that. He's mainly kind of a producer. But I thought this was a really sort of demented send up on the things that you mentioned. Legends of the Hidden Temple, they even have down to the matching t-shirts, and Double Dare, Guts a little bit, but really mainly those two. But I liked it with the final punchline of the thing when you're in the cave being, oh, it's like Legends of the Hidden Temple, but no, Olmec is a real entity. And like, no, he's really there trying to like satiate him. And no, like Shrine of the Silver Monkey isn't just like a thing. It's like, these are ancient artifacts and like, you must appease him. And, should you get through all this stuff, you will get your wish. You had mentioned that, Joe, actually, as you were saying that, I was just thinking about her really gruesome injury. I don't know. I shouldn't even really say this because I don't know if this is true, but I wonder if there were weird injuries like that, because it's almost like Ozzy knew they were getting too close or something. We don't really know very much about the Ozzy creature or whatever.
That's interesting.
But like the idea that like, oh, she was gonna win, and then like she had to have this gruesome injury, because it is like there's no way there's like a slip side. It's like how she like broke her leg in a ridiculously gruesome fashion.
Plus, the movie kind of intentionally just rewinds it and brings it back and rewinds it and brings it back and everything. It's very confusing and vague.
Well, it's because the mom is watching that tape. Yeah. But regardless, who knows? That whole thing, I think, is a send up. What it actually reminded me of a little bit too was kind of the way like Panos, what's his name, the guy who did Bandy in Colorado Space.
Oh yeah, Panos Cosmatos or something.
Cosmopolitan. That the Cheddar Goblin commercial in Mandy, where it's like this goofy like thing where he's like rah, 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 like all this stuff. That's what the like Legends of the Hidden Temple sequence in this Ozzy's Dungeon like reminded me of. Like it's this they're catching meat in their mouths. It's like it's not stuff that they're really doing. It's of course an exaggerated version of it. And then you have some of the phantasmagorical stuff at the end with the kind of Lovecraftian, I don't know, the birth C-section, whatever that thing is that grants the wish and melts their faces off. So all of that stuff. I like the revenge stuff. I love her mom. Her mom was, oh man, she has a line about the Sahara Desert that I don't want to repeat on this podcast, but it was wonderful. just like the acting, everyone felt like they were just like on the same page. I like just one other really small details. Like they're listening to free jazz when he's driving them to the set, or when they're being driven to the set to go back to this like ancient cave. And they're just like listening to free jazz, and it's just like, that is such a Flying Lotus touch. Like, I don't know anything about him as a director because it's the first thing he's directed, but I was just like, that's awesome. So that one just totally fired on all cylinders for me personally.
Nice.
The other four I liked. I liked the touches of things, how they tried to implement 1999 specifically. The Gawker sequence invokes American Pie very specifically. there's a lot of this kind of in the first sequence called shredding, which refers to like this rock band that's the thing, but also like skateboarding, because they do all these like fisheye lens shots. It's very CKNY, very Jackass. So like it really honed in on that very well. The music, actually, I thought in the first sequence they did a better job with that than they really, quite frankly, needed to.
Yeah,
like the band, the rack, and then the
Bitch Cat,
right? Yeah, I was thinking Pussy something, but yeah. Anyway, regardless, that band, like their music actually is pretty good, like for what really is even needed for this movie. So I liked those sort of touches. At one point, I think this is in Gawkers as well. Someone says, "What do you like?" Or no, this is in the fifth one, the Hell one.
To Hell and Back.
They mention Qui-Gon and Pokemon back to back, and it's like that seems like, oh, those are known things. But Phantom Menace came out in '99, and Pokemon was, again, like it seems like, oh, Pokemon's a cultural phenomenon. Yes, it is, but in '99, it was really. So again, I just like those sort of details. I know that those things don't necessarily matter to the overall thing, but I thought that was neat. Other than that, I thought the fifth one was pretty weak. I went to a haunted house about 2 weeks ago. It was in Kentucky, or about a week ago. It was quite scary, but that fifth one reminded me of, especially the actress that played Mabel. She seemed like she was an actress at like a haunted house where she's like, "Come with me."
She really did.
I was like, "This is terrible acting." So that was just sort of unconvincing. But I liked the prop work, like you'd like in a haunted house, where it's like, "Oh, here's this goofy thing. Let's shine a light on it for a second." So I liked that degree. I liked the sorority. I think I generally liked them well enough. They were all, the other four were just roughly about take it or leave it overall for me. But Ozzy's Dungeon, I think, is worth seeing it overall.
See, the interesting thing is, like, Ozzy's Dungeon worked for me quite a bit until the revenge plot came into play, and then I just kind of dazed out of it a little bit. But honestly, that wasn't my favorite one. My favorite one was, weirdly enough, it was Suicide Bid, the sorority one. Because that felt like such a campfire story, which I know isn't what VHS, the franchise, is all about at all, but it felt like this campfire story, this urban legend thing. And when it got to the point where the monster came, like, up until that point, I was like, I don't need a creature effect in this. I don't need a supernatural thing. Like, this is scary and horrifying enough to be something on its own. And then we get the, standard, like, monster creature effect and everything. And it's cool. It's fine. But really, up until that point, I was like, I was in it. And that, like, that didn't even let me down or anything. I just felt like this was probably one of the best segments, narratively speaking, that I've seen in one of these movies. And the Gawkers, I loved that for the American Pie-esque kind of shenanigans, and I did not expect it to turn into is it Medusa?
Gorgon.
Yeah. Like I could not have fathomed it would go that route. And then when it did, I was just like, oh, this is pretty awesome. This is satisfying to me. And then Shredding and To Hell and Back, those two, Shredding, I felt, took way too long to get to the scare stuff. Like, it felt like it was all build up, and then once we got to it, like, that one character, I think it was Caleb, the one that was like the most obnoxious of them and everything. I'm like, okay, he's really overbearing, he's really annoying. I'm so excited to see him get killed. And like, it's just a quick flash on the screen and you get nothing really that good with it. And I'm just like, okay, that's fine. And then To Hell and Back, I like the concept of it. I wasn't expecting the kind of the friendship storyline. I thought that was a very sweet kind of a sweet storyline to go down. But it was fine. Yeah. I will say VHS 94 honestly blows this out of the water for me, because it was so good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see that, given that I hadn't. I'd spent a lot of time away from this sort of series, so I'd be interested to go back and see that, and apparently to not see Viral.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny because my To Hell and Back was probably my favorite one.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Although I will say, I found the two main characters to be insufferable.
Yeah.
And, just the way that they were like even that Mabel character is just like, dude, shut the hell up.
Yeah.
Like, shut up. You're gonna die if you don't shut up now. But it was the concept. It was very goofy. It didn't take itself too seriously. It had just enough in terms of scares for me. Like there were just a couple of, it was that same thing of just like demon looking characters popping out.
Yeah.
But I thought the effects were really good. Like the first demon they see, like it was really detailed with, like it had like the wings or something. And it was just like that's the one cool thing about the series is that they have, as much as I, was criticizing it earlier, they have, on a budget, pretty good creature effects. And, and there was there was the only time I even recognized CGI, I think, was in the Gawkers one with the snake, the Gorgon character.
Oh yeah.
Right. But I don't even know that there was any more CG in it at all. But I loved that dark humor of To Hell and Back, where they literally go through hell to get back to Earth, and then they're like reborn, and then they're just immediately killed. I wish they would have just like both woken back up in hell again and just been like, oh,
we're here again, but we're buddies again. So cool. Yeah.
I did
when you lose, don't lose the lesson.
Yes. I did enjoy the suicide bid one. The shredding one for me was just throwaway. I couldn't stand any of the characters. Even all of the characters pretty much are insufferable on one level or another. Are just they're completely douchey, in so many different ways. But the shredding, for some reason, it felt worse than the others. And in Suicide Bid, there was at least the protagonist of the piece that was likable to some degree, at least. So
absolutely.
She was good too. I mean, it's that whole thing of like Ryan Reynolds and Buried, where it's like a lot of it is not. Well, I mean, a lot of the segment is kind of her, kind of acting by herself and with spiders, and a really gnarly creature in that one as well.
The spiders
cool. When it's like right up against the cross glass thing, like that was neat. So
the spiders in that segment just fucked me up. I was not expecting that, and I was just again that played into just the cruelty of that prank and everything, and the sadness of her character. I was really impressed with that, and it skeeved me out so bad. It was bad. One thing that this movie does that I think is a very, very smart departure for this franchise is that it doesn't have a conventional framing story. It's just the collection of VHS, videos and everything that's all tied together with the Gawkers videotape with the goofy, toy soldiers and stuff. That I felt was just such a relief, because as much as I really, really enjoyed VHS 94, the frame story of that is god awful. Just it's not VHS viral bad, but it's like it's silly. It's basically a SWAT team going into this building, and then they find this these gruesome scenes, and then each room they go into has like videos, and then it just plays the videos and they watch it. It's just kind of it's dumb.
I feel like that's the same from the first two.
Pretty much.
I can't remember.
Pretty much. Yeah. So
looser this one. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I did kind of enjoy that as ridiculous as they were, and there were times where I was like, let's just get to the next one, come on. But it was kind of a cutesy little like interlude for a couple of seconds of the, this kind of gruesome toy soldier game where they're just like being dismembered, and there's just like the blood coming out everywhere. It was just kind of
well, the idea is that those segments are like being taped over with these stories, right? Like that was the idea, that like he had just done these screwing around with his brother's camera, these like stupid little army men thing, and then these stories are like that. I kind of like too. I mean, that's kind of inherent in all this VHS stuff, but like the idea that like that's how you would record stuff. Of course, you know, so you tape stuff.
Yeah.
You know, back then. So that's a fun little detail. And yeah, I'm fine with no big framing story. I think sometimes these anthology movies really are beholden to them in ways that are really not great. I really like the frame story from Tales from the Hood. I wasn't joking about that. I do really like that overall. Actually, it's a pretty good movie overall. But like
I've never seen
what ends up being with it. Yeah,
I've never seen that one either.
Nice,
it's not bad.
Nice.
It's better than VHS Viral.
Nice. There you go. Very nice. Anything else we have to talk about with VHS 99? I don't want to take up too much more of your guys' time. You guys have been very gracious with your time this evening.
Well, thanks. I mean, I would just kind of say this sort of is what it is. And if you're familiar with the other ones, you know, to the extent that you're interested in seeing it, go ahead and watch it. I mean, it's not a waste of time. I wouldn't call it a waste of time by any means. You know, I found a moderate amount of enjoyment out of probably a moderate amount, at least as a whole. And there, you know, a couple of bits that, you know, I thought were kind of outwardly fun. And like I said, the Ozzy's Dungeon one, it felt like a missed opportunity to me to do something like really cool and memorable. And it did something sort of fun and different, but it could have been very memorable and sort of like something to me that I would be telling people about as an individual story. Like, oh my God, you got to see this, you know, as a fan of that sort of thing from years gone by.
Yeah.
I think these anthology movies, especially this being on Shudder / AMC Plus. I don't want to sound like, you know, the kids these days and what they're into and invoke Quibi,
club,
you know, and invoke Quibi. But I think that having sort of bite-sized, you know, if you will, you know, sort of candies, you know, for like, I think that's why these anthology films tend to work. And again, I think that having this like on a streamer, you know, this and the one you just said, 94, VHS 94 and 99, I think it's a good opportunity people to check some stuff out. And again, like maybe you won't vibe with every story, but you know, if you like a few of them, you know, if you watch a couple of them, you like a few of them, then you know, hopefully you'll get something out of them. That'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and to kind of talk about VHS 85 real quick, it is coming in 2023. The lineup of directors are David Bruckner, who's the only legacy director. Scott Derrickson, interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, Gigi Saul Guerrero, not sure who that is. Natasha Kermani and Mike P. Nelson. So let's see, who are these people?
Well, Scott Derrickson, I mean, you know, I like the Black Phone. I love Sinister. You know, he's of course he did the first Doctor Strange movie. So yeah, I'll be interested certainly to see, you know, what he'll do. Dave Bruckner is, and he just did the recent Hellraiser movie, my first Hellraiser movie, but the Night House, which I think is a really wonderful movie.
Oh, the Night House was excellent.
A couple years ago, and so yeah, I haven't heard. I don't know of any of those other directors off the top of my head, but
yeah, me neither. Yeah. So, any parting thoughts, or should we start wrapping up, guys?
Let's go.
Alrighty. Well,
get out of here.
Joe's getting sleepy.
Started talking to you guys.
Alrighty. Well, once again, Halloween Ends is in theaters and on Peacock, and VHS 99 and VHS 94 are both on Shudder. And I believe that the rest of the VHS movies are on Hulu, I think.
Yes, I think I looked that up last night. I'm pretty sure that's right.
Nice. So go check all of that out. And before we go, first of all, thank you guys so much for joining me for this episode of The Obsessive Viewers.
Thank you.
Yeah, and why don't you go ahead and tell everyone where they can find you guys online and your work and everything. Of course, I'll put links to all this in the show notes and all that. But just for the listeners, where can we find you guys online?
Grab me on Facebook, grab me on Letterboxd, and check out my work, Midwest Film Journal, Medium Cool, a movie podcast, wherever you listen to your podcasts. hopefully on the same platform as this one, maybe if you're into such thing. That's about it. I don't know. Come knock on my door.
Come on, knock on his door.
Text me.
Go to trick or treat at his house. Show up with the Groucho Marx glasses.
I'm not going to tell you my address, but if you can find it, then more power to you.
I'll post his address on my Twitter.
Nice.
Awakeinthedark.com. Wake in the dark, not in, like, anyway. That's my, like, everything's on there, including reprints of the Midwest Film Journal articles that I'll have up, and weekly reviews, podcasts whenever I feel like doing them. We are going to be doing Black Adam. We'll be doing an episode. We're recording that tomorrow, so
nice.
That'll be up soon. But yep, that's me.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys once again. And for the listeners, of course, you guys can find me anywhere, like Obsessive Viewer, anywhere. My other shows, Anthology and Tower Junkies as well. And once again, just check out the Patreon, please. Daddy needs money. No, I
money.
Immediately regret saying that, but patreon.com/Obsessive Viewer. There is literally hundreds and hundreds of audio recordings on there. It's ridiculous. So I'm gonna start playing us out. Joe, Brent, thank you guys so much for joining me, and let us all know what you guys thought of VHS 99 and Halloween Ends. Not sure what we're gonna do in the next episode, but stay tuned, I guess. And check out Anthology and Tower Junkies. So without further ado, thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. And now, enjoy this short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. For the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, such as early access to episodes, TV, book, and movie reviews and reaction recordings, commentary tracks, and Patreon potpourri episodes, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy.
Screwing all of this stuff.
Let's talk about that, because that was so frustrating. Because it's the radio DJ had in his studio, in the one or two scenes in there, he had an ElectroVoice RE20, which I will say is the exact same microphone that I'm talking into now. I'm talking into it correctly. What was that?
Did you purposely make sure you're using that one for the...
I honestly, I did. But to demonstrate, the way that the mic is set up in that scene is it is vertical, and it's like it's vertical as if it's a side address microphone. It's not. It's a front address microphone. I'm talking into the end of it now to demonstrate. If I were to talk into it the way that he was talking into it, this is how it would sound. Hi, I am a character in Halloween Ends that does not know how to use a freaking microphone because I'm recording into the side of it or the top of it when I should be recording into the front of it. This is how it would sound.
Sounds real nice.
I know, right? You were being sarcastic,
sounds
right?
Great.
No.
Yeah. Please don't break up with me.
No. But it's funny because I was thinking about that because like I'm mostly being facetious about it because, you know, who cares? But also it's just so awkward and it's frustrating. Yeah.
This podcast was edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find links to all of our shows at ObsessiveViewer.com/podcasts. For exclusive bonus content, including reviews, commentaries, and B-roll episodes, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.